My God, there is just so much shit going on with this government at the moment. There's never enough money, so we can't pay the public sector workers. But some helpful advice from Anne Widdecombe recently. If you can't afford a cheese sandwich, don't buy cheese. See, it's easy really. But while food bank use, the cost of living crisis and energy cost have rocketed, the top 1% of earners have seen their incomes increase by 40%. There is money, it's just not in the right places. But what has led to is Rolls-Royce cars and private jet manufacturers' businesses booming. Haven't you ordered yours yet? That's going to be great for the environment. And speaking of the environment, what's going on in the water industry? When the water industry was privatised, it was estimated that to get the infrastructure up to scratch would cost around 20 billion. But they didn't think of putting that in and making it a requirement. Since then, they've taken over 50 billion in directors' bonuses and shareholder dividends. Now we're being told it'll cost another 10 billion to put right, and we're going to have to pay for it. You'd almost think it was corrupt, but real corruption is more, well, Dido Harding, who was in charge of Test and Trace, even though she failed dismally in all her previous roles, wasted £37 billion. But there'll be nothing done about it, partly because her husband had the role of looking into misuse of taxpayers' money. There's Baroness Michelle Mone, who earned millions after being given a COVID contract, even though she'd just set up a company with no trading history. The inquiry is, of course, ongoing, but don't hold your breath. Kwasi Kwarteng avoided tax, but isn't being prosecuted. And you might not have heard of William Adderley. He's a British billionaire who donated £758,000 to the Tories in 2021. Guess what he got in 2022? A knighthood. And you can't mention corruption without mentioning Boris Johnson. He's made over £4 million from public speaking and other engagements since standing down as Prime Minister, even though he's still meant to be a serving MP. We've paid £250,000 towards his lawyers in the coronavirus inquiry, but now they found he broke even more rules than we knew about. So he sacked them, and the new ones will cost us £1 million. All this when legal aid has been cut for most people. And he recently paid 3.8 million for a 9-bed house in cash. No one knows where the money came from, and it seems rather a lot for someone who had to borrow 800,000 not so long ago. But surely Rishi isn't like that. Well, his wife still earns money from a company dealing with Russia, despite the sanctions. Another of his wife's companies was consulted in the drafting of a bill that makes it more profitable for larger care companies like hers. He's earned millions from a US-based investment fund, but Downing Street won't release details as it's not in the public interest, apparently. I'm bloody interested. And Rishi had a meeting with American health bosses when he was Chancellor that was off the record until someone found out about it. So ask yourself why a multi-millionaire does a job worth 160 grand a year and look at the changes he's bringing in and who benefits from them. For example, he's announced recently the new NHS app will give you the option of booking with private health companies, which leads us nicely onto the NHS. Let's look at some of the donations to Tory MPs from private health companies or people who represent them. Owen Paterson received almost £100,000 from a company he lobbied for, against the lobbying rules, and for which he was forced to resign. John Redwood, just under 250,000. Ian Duncan Smith, 25,000. Tom Tugendhat, £70,000 of shares. Lee Anderson, 43,000. Liam Fox, 30,000. Matt Hancock, 32,000. And there's a guy called Stephen Bryan who earns £1,600 a month from a recruitment firm that he lobbied for the NHS to use. Now, talking of lobbying, Rishi Sunak has appointed a lobbyist to his inner circle who works for Palantir. That's an American company who were given a £360 million contract to create a database of all NHS users. I wonder why. Because these lying bastards are absolutely going to privatise the NHS if they get in for another term. So next time you hear an MP blaming the COVID pandemic and the war in Ukraine for all our problems, or at least the ones that they don't blame the immigrants for, don't forget the position they're talking from and what they stand to gain. I will maybe mention Liz Truss's economy crashing mini budget and the way they fucked up Brexit.